All right. Welcome to dance training number, I believe we're at 47 for the dance trainings. Yeah. I don't have any write-in questions today, so I will let those of you who are on the call write in and ask questions. So it looks like William, you're the only one so far on the call. So if you have any questions, pop them in. If not, I am going to talk about musicality today. It'll take me a minute to find my musicality topic that I want to talk about. All right. Here it is. So what I want to talk about until there's other questions, if anybody comes up with questions, feel free to pop them in. Otherwise, what I want to talk about today is musicality, and I want to go over all the different ways that we can think of musicality, or at least all the ways that I look at musicality and think of it as different. I'm not going to go into too much detail about any one of these topics because there's so many of them. My goal for this right now, unless someone asks me to go into detail, is to give you all of the different ways that you can look at musicality, because some of them are going to be more valuable for you. They're going to hit home more for you, and they're all going to mix. So in other words, when you work on energy of a dance, that is also gonna work. It's also gonna relate to the volume of the music. They're not the same thing, but if you work on one, you might improve in the other, and vice versa. So by hitting how many different topics do I have? I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. I have 18 different topics. And so my goal with this is just to give you an idea of each of these different topics, and then if we have time at the end, we can go over 1 or 2 of them that are most exciting to go over for you. So let's see. All right, and any one of these, by the way, just for those of you that are teachers on the call, any one of these topics could be a whole hour-long class, could probably be longer than that as well, depending on how you organize it. But so you can use any of these in any one class, as well as you can combine and talk about multiple of these different things in one class. For me, the more perspectives I have on dance, the more ways I look at it and go, oh, this is what we're talking, or this is a way that I can think of dance, and this is a way that I can improve, the better I get. you know, and it really does, like the exact same topic just looked at from a slightly different angle can make such a huge difference. For example, for me, you know, when I started learning to dance, like I learned a lot of really cool stuff and it helped my dancing. But at some point I decided, someone asked me the question, why do you dance? Or why do you take classes, I guess was the question. And I said, well, I want to improve my dancing. Well, why do you want to improve your dancing? And I said, well, I don't know, I like being a great dancer. Why do you like being a great dancer? Well, I like to connect with people and I like to be able to communicate with them. And they're like, okay, you like to communicate with people. Like what, so let's look at that. Like instead of teaching a dance class and improving someone's dancing, why not have your focus be more on communicating with people? And we really delved into it, and it was like, why do I want to communicate with people? Well, I want to make those dances amazing. Like, and I realized as I kept asking the whys, my end goal was because I wanted to have more amazing dances with more people, like with everyone ideally. You know, I wanted to just constantly improve my ability to have amazing dances, and not just dances though, but like interactions. And I wanted my life to improve through communication. And so for me, that perspective switched things for me. When I started looking at everything that I had learned from the perspective of like, what's my end goal here? My end goal is just to have more amazing dances, to connect better with people, both on and off the dance floor. Like, and once I realized that, like I started looking at the things that I've learned in a different way. And I started teaching the things I had learned in a different way. And it's not drastically different. It's just subtle differences. But it really made a difference for me in things like, I've talked about this before, but things that I had learned, like counterbalance. You know, I had originally learned counterbalance in a very specific way that helped my dancing with some people and just destroyed my dancing with others because they weren't doing it the way that I learned it, you know? And so like those people that weren't doing it the way that I learned it, I couldn't have great dances with them. I couldn't connect with them. I couldn't enjoy my interactions with them, you know? And so like my learning counterbalance, that class did not help with my end goal, at least not with everyone. It helps sometimes, but it didn't help with everyone. And when I started thinking about, okay, how do I help it with everyone? I started redeveloping the concept of counterbalance so that it worked with everyone, not just those people that learned the way I learned, right? And that completely changed everything for me. And so I guess my point is like, the perspective you come at things, even though it might be the same topic, we're just talking about musicality, but by coming at it from a different perspective, it can open up a whole bunch of doors for you. So, so we're going to talk about 18 different ways to look at musicality. And I'll give you just a brief overview of them all. And then if you guys want me to go into more detail in one, we can do that. All right. So the first one is energy changes. Energy changes for me are, it's very simple as like what feels more energetic, what feels less energetic. When you listen to music, what moments are energetic, what moments are not energetic. And usually energy comes from like softer is less energetic and louder is more energetic, right? Usually, but that's not always the case. There's some times where more energy comes from a silence, right? There's like, whoa, something happened. And it was not just the silence, but it was, in that case, it was It was something loud that, or something, it doesn't even necessarily have to be loud. It could be, right? Like that is energetic. Its motion is energetic, or stop. It could be just fast to stop is energetic. And so when I'm thinking energy in the music, I'm listening for something that shows an energy change, whether that be volume going low to high, or whether that be like something that just says like stop, don't do anything, or something that says do a lot. That's how I think of being musical, is I try to match my movement, my energy movement, to the energy of the song, right? And so, and again, energy usually can mean bigger, right? Or faster. It doesn't have to mean bigger. It could mean faster. It could mean sharper, right? And so that's what I'm thinking of when I think energy. I'm trying to match the energy of my movement, whether it be like, okay, here's the energy of me opening my hand, right? And that is more energetic than that, right? But even just, that's not necessarily fast, but you can see there's more energy in it than just me closing my hand and opening my hand, right? Because I'm putting tension into it. So energy is that aspect, and that's a great way to try to match your dancing to the energy. You don't just have to match it though. You can also complement, I guess would be the word, or even oppose, go the exact opposite way. Sometimes there's music going on and you're moving at a regular pace, and the music stops and you stop with it. But sometimes the music stops and you go even crazier. You do something like an aerial or something bigger, wilder, and it keeps going until the music starts up again, and then you calm back down and do your thing. So it doesn't have to be exactly with it. It just needs to show that you recognize the change and that you're changing with it. Most of the time, I would stick with staying with it. But every once in a while, you want to complement, you want to do something the exact opposite, and that can work too. So that's energy changes. The next thing I would say would be volume changes. Now, volume changes are very simple. It's just volume of the music or volume of what you're listening to. So you can hear I'm getting softer right now, and now I'm getting louder. And the music does that all the time. And it does that really in obvious ways, like every once in a while the band will just get soft and they'll play really soft music for a little while, and then they'll explode and they'll do all this crazy stuff and volume gets loud, and then they'll get soft again. But even in a regular song, when you're listening to a regular song go, you'll hear inflections in the music that happen every once in a while. They're not the whole time. They're just for a moment that it gets louder. Or it might even get softer for just a moment, not for a long time, but just a little bit. And then it goes right back to its regular. So even just one horn blaring or one horn blaring can be the difference, right? Or not blaring. It's so the volume changes can happen a long time or very short, consistent things. And same in your movement, you can have volume of movement. So if you watch even just me opening my hand, right? I can open my hand and close it, or I can open it up and close it, right? So there's more volume or less volume, right? And same thing, every move you do, whether you do this, this is very small versus bam, big, right? Pecs, small ones, or big, right? So I want you to think all the moves you do to match them to the volume of the music. And again, you can contrast. I don't know, I haven't ever, maybe I have, but I don't think of contrasting volume as often. I usually try to match the volume, but certainly I suggest definitely play with that. Like, there's no reason just because I haven't done it that you shouldn't try it, right? Because there's probably some really valuable stuff. In fact, now I kind of want to go try that out. I bet it's a really valuable exercise to try out contrasting the volume with the volume of the music and almost doing the opposites, especially at moments. Sometimes moments will be the spot to do it. The other thing that I like, so now we have energy and we have volume, and they relate quite a bit. And another thing you might want to practice would just be like comparing the two at the same time, thinking about, okay, my energy is high, but my volume is low. Right? So that would be that, like, this kind of thing, like where you're going, the tension is high, but the volume is not, right? Or vice versa, your volume is high, but your energy is low, you know. And so if you watch me do my pecs, right, I can have like high energy pecs, or the volume can still be big, but the energy is like kind of dull, right? So the volume's still there, but the energy's less. And notice speed affected it, and other things can affect, but you're comparing and contrasting the concept of volume with the concept of energy. Let's see. So that's really 3 things so far. I'm gonna, the 4th thing, the overall feel of different songs, right? So every song, I think, has its own feel, right? Some songs feel happy, some songs feel sad, but you can really get into more depth than just happy and sad, right? Like when you start listening to a song, you might, like the first few times you listen, you might just be like happy, sad, and you're splitting them up that way. But now listen to all the happy songs and just look at, okay, what's the difference between these? Well, this is like I just won the lottery happy. And this song is more like I'm walking down a park on a perfect day and just kind of content, happy, you know, walking through the fields and it's beautiful. And or this one's like, I just, what's another form of happy? I mean, you guys write in, what are some forms of happy that you can think of that are different than, you know, winning the lottery or content, right? And really, like for me, you're developing your ability to, the goal here is to develop your ability to get the overall feel of a song and get more than just the general like standards. I mean, the standards are good to start. Definitely great to just start out with happy, sad, tired, competitive, simple things. But as you go, you want to build stories around them, because most songs have stories. If you listen to the lyrics, they have something they're telling you. It's more than just, I'm happy today, I'm happy today, I'm happy today. They give you a whole story around why they're happy or whatever it is, or I'm sad or I'm excited. But they give you a story behind it, and that's what really makes each song its own character. And for me, that can affect, just thinking about that while you dance can affect your mood, can affect how you dance and all that kind of stuff. So I would say at a minimum, like when you're practicing that kind of stuff, just think about the feeling of what it is and let that guide your movement. But at a more advanced level, you might even play off of the words that are in the song, the very specific things, and you might do things that actually show you walking down a park, right? You're strolling arm in arm with your partner, walking down the lane during part of this, giving them the feeling of, I am happy walking down a park, you know, walking in a park or something. You might actually be looking at stuff in a way that like you're appreciating what's around you, right? So So you might have some acting skills even coming into play while you're doing this, to add to your dance. And whether that be because you're performing or you're just dancing with another partner, it's fun to do that with a partner, to show with them that this is more than just a normal dance, that we're taking this to another level by telling a story. And even if it's not a story, like I said, just giving a general feeling can really enhance a dance. I've had some of my best dances with anger as my general feeling, you know, and I harness that anger to mean power. You know, I don't necessarily like give my partner like angry looks or anything, but I use the anger feeling to emote power in the dance, and those dances can be really amazing. There's a lot of different avenues. Again, like I'm just touching on it, but there's a lot of different things that you can explore within the overall feeling of a song. You know, sit down with the lyrics and just write out the lyrics or read the lyrics and find out what the general feeling of a song is. I've actually done that in classes where my teacher made me sit down and like read the lyrics and discuss with the group what the feeling of the song was. It was an awesome class too. We then later actually just danced, and they would call out the emotions of the song, and everybody dancing would change the emotion as someone called it out, and then someone else would call out a different emotion, and half the people were dancing, half of them were watching, and it was incredible to watch, incredible to do. Let's see, what's some other topics? Oh, the overall feel within the same song is another thing. And I kind of just hinted at that right now, in that we danced to one song and one person would call out one emotion, passionate, and another person would call out love. Very similar emotions. They both are in that song, but they're different. And even within one song, sometimes those emotions will change. They might start off passionate in love, and then they might get angry at each other, and then they might fall back in love, right? So even within one song, you can look at, let's just play one song and let's look at all the emotions that this song takes us through as we listen to this song. So overall feel within the same song is its own thing. And I do kind of the similar aspects of overall feel of different songs, but just do it. Just listen to one song and describe it over and over, give different descriptions, listen to it several times and see what comes out. The next musicality topic, number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The sixth one is how to predict music. So like really training yourself to predict music, I would play a bunch of songs that I've never heard before, and try to predict what's coming up next. And you can do that a few different ways. You can practice it by singing, right? By listening to the song and trying to predict and go dee-da, ba-doo-da, ba-da, ba-bow, and try to predict what's happening. Or actually, some people will even try to predict the lyrics to a song. That's hard, but I've seen people that can do that, that can literally just sing along with the song they've never heard before, because they practiced it so much, they can tell what's happening as it's happening. Or maybe they're just slightly behind, but they're so slightly behind that you don't notice it. But you could also do it by moving your body, you know, your whole body with a partner, or even just one body part. It's really a lot easier just to move your hand and just try to predict music by closing and opening your hand at different moments to show how the music's moving. But play songs that you've never heard before, right? And predict what's happening in those songs, and be okay with failure. You're gonna mess up. You're gonna mess up a bunch, but I promise you'll mess up a lot less once you've practiced this. And the more you practice, the less you'll mess up, and the more you'll like nail stuff. And it feels amazing to nail things when you're like, just even if you're just tapping your foot or tapping your hands or something, just being like, noticing that, like, wow, I hit that, is awesome. And it's easier than you think. or than you may think. Some of you might be like, yeah, I can do that. Some of you that might be like, I don't know, that's hard. It's not as hard as you think. So 7, create a story. So creating a story, it's a little different for me than the overall feel of a different song, because creating a story for me is when you pick a basic, you go outside of it, you return to it, and then you adjust the basic as well. So in other words, for me, a storyline is not just a random occurrence of a bunch of different stuff. That's not a story. Like, to me, that's more just a bunch of random things being thrown together. Like, if you watch movies, they don't usually just randomly throw this and this and this into the movie. They have them all tie in together and build off of each other, and that's usually what creates a story. So for me, the way that I do that in dance is I pick a basic. What that basic could be, a basic move. Like if it's a Lindy Hop song, the basic could be a swing out. If it's a tango song, the basic could be just walking, right? Like, or even if it's any song, you can pick whatever basic you want. You can pick walking as your basic. You can pick, if you want to be dorky, you can pick, like, I'm not gonna say it's dorky, but usually it's kind of cheesy, head thing. You could pick a basic like that. I've seen someone pick their basic to be brushing their teeth, and they did this in front of a crowd of like 500 people. They brushed their teeth for an entire song, and it was brilliant, right? It was an amazing choreography, a great story of just brushing their teeth. Because they built off that. They went, okay, here's my basic, I'm brushing my teeth. And then they changed the rhythms, and then they slowed down and sped up. And then I don't know what else they did. Like, if I'm thinking myself, I'd probably like drop the toothbrush at one point in the song when there's no music, like drop it and then pick it up and be like, am I going to, like, about to brush? No. About to, no. Like, clean it off, but all being musical while doing it. And then you've got a story that's going off of this. So, like, I want you to be creative with it. I don't want you to think it has to be just moves. It could be anything. It could be just opening and closing your hand. It can be something that creates a song and creates a story, and you can build off of that. But the keys to building a great story are having that basic that you build off of, and then building off of it, right? So going somewhere with it. Like, if all I did was open and close my hand for 3 minutes, you'd be bored, right? It's like you start out with your basic, and then all of a sudden you like try to open and you can't. You're like, oh man, what? And then you're like trying to get it, and you can't. And all while you're being musical about it, right? You're going, like, you play with it, right? You build off, you tell a story with this, and then you come back to your basic. Maybe later you start going, oh, now it's working again, right? I'm opening my hand again. And then something else comes in and the basic changes. Whoa, now there's 2, right? And some of you are probably like actually like listening to me and like watching me open and close my hands, and you haven't gotten bored yet, even though all I've really done is open and close my hand, right? And imagine if I was doing this to music, right? If I'm doing this to music, it's even better. But everything I'm doing, I'm trying to be musical, but tell a story, pick a basic, build off of it, come back to it, change it up a little, add things to it, but use my basic to tell that story. So that is creating a story. Then we have rhythm options. So rhythm options is something else that I would think of, where I'm looking at, okay, there's different rhythms that we can have. And I'm going to use like the classic way of looking at rhythm. What is that? When I think of rhythm, I think a lot of people think of kind of the timing. So whether you do something with a dot, 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 dot timing, or a dot, 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 dot timing, um, or maybe a dot, 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 or dot, 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 dot. These are all different rhythms, right? So the music might be going 1, 2, 3, 4, and you're going da, ga, da, ga, da, ga, da, or ga, ga, da, ga, ga, da, ga, ga, da, or da, 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 ga, da, ga, da, 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 ga, da, da, right? And so I'm going to pick rhythms, and then I'm going to do the same moves with different rhythms. As best I can, right? I mean, the moves will obviously start to morph and change a little bit, but I'm going to take one move and just try a bunch of different rhythms to it. And so the way to do that, like, is just pick some different rhythms. Write down 3 rhythms that you want to do, or listen to 3 rhythms, and keep them simple. It can be dakata, 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 or dot, 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 or dot, 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 dot. Right? There's 3 rhythms that you have, and then you do one move and you try to do that over and over, 3 different rhythms. Or you can just pick one rhythm and just the whole song do that rhythm as much as possible, right? Just keep doing that rhythm over and over and over, trying to show the musicality in that rhythm. And again, like, these are all the exercises I'm doing. Like, I'm really focusing on one topic for a whole song or for an hour or something, because I think every song I want to always do that every moment of every song, but I'm just trying to get it in my body so that it's a habit, right? So that, like, I don't have to think about it. When I go dancing, it's already in my body to hit those rhythms whenever I feel that that's the best moment to hit them. And my body's gonna naturally emote the feeling of the overall song as well as the feeling of each part of the song. And these things are gonna happen without me even needing to think about it, because I've practiced it so much. That's the thing. If you hone in on one topic and really practice that for an entire hour, it's like practicing your musicality, in that normally people just practice their musicality and try to be more musical. And if they practice for a whole hour, then they probably only practice that specific topic we're talking about, rhythm, for moments in that hour. They probably only practice feeling the song for moments. So you can get like a whole year's worth of training in 1 hour by really focusing on that one topic. So large phrase changes are basically like how to break this down. I'll give an example first. In Lindy Hop, we have AABA structure. So there's 4 8 counts of this section called A. And then there's another 4 8 counts of another thing that sounds very similar to those first 4 8 counts. That's A again, AA. Then there's a B. It's 4 8 counts that sound very different than those first 2 A's. And then there's another A at the end, which is 4 8 counts that sound very similar to the first two sets. So AABA. So in that example, the large phrase change is when you go from the A to the B, or from the B back to the A. Those are huge differences in the music that are like really obvious changes. And this happens in all music. Like, I mean, not all music. Some songs don't really have any large phrase changes. They just kind of sound the same throughout the whole song. Although what I look at, there's large phrases, there's large ones and small ones, and even in some songs, like, there's some that are going to stand out as bigger than others. So for the purpose of whatever your song is, you're looking for the biggest, most obvious changes in the feeling of the song. And ideally, those changes last long. Like for large phrase changes, usually they last for at least 4 8 counts, but maybe sometimes they only last for 1 or 2 8 counts. But that's one thing that I'm looking for songs, is these big changes. And those are the moments that, like, Mario Robau, brilliant West Coast swing dancer, as well as just brilliant dancer in general, a brilliant musicality dancer, always says that's like paying the mortgage. There's certain bills that you don't want to not pay, right? Like your phone bill, if you don't pay that, well, you can't talk on the phone, right? But if you don't pay your mortgage, you can't live in your house. That's a big deal, right? And so for me, that's the large phrase change is that mortgage payment. And then the small phrase changes are maybe the phone bill. And then like the horns that hit every once in a while are maybe maybe they're your internet service or something, you know, or maybe they're you get the idea. They're something that's less important to you. So large phrase changes, you're looking for those drastic changes. Those are the things you want to hit, right? You want to try to make sure that you make a big change in your dancing when it makes a big change in its sound. Examples of that I've done are I'm doing Lindy Hop and then it changes the sound and I change to Charleston, right? And then it changes back and I change back to Lindy Hop, right? But it doesn't have to be that drastic. It could be just something different that you're changing, like the amount of bounce you have in your Lindy Hop could be really bouncy and then it goes to little bounce. But you're basically looking for phrase changes, large phrase changes in changing your dancing when those changes happen. And just practicing that as much as possible so that it becomes, again, a habit, so that you just, when that happens, you change naturally with it. So those are large phrase changes. The next topic is small phrase changes, right? Or subtle phrase changes. And those happen more frequently. The change from A to A, right, is a subtle change because it's really just going back and repeating from the beginning again, but it is a change. Or even within A, there's 4 8 counts, and each one of those has its own subtle change. If you listen to music, ado, 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 boo, boo, ado, 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 boo, boo, right? So it changed from its first one, it repeated, but it had a little small ado, boo, boo that changed it and said, hey, we're doing something different, now we're going back. Adida, adida, adidi, adida, adida, adidi, like small changes even within that, right? I don't know, I'm not the best musical person to sing things, but play any song, you'll hear, like even in every 8 count that they play, there's these smaller, subtler changes that are happening within that 8 counts that says, we're about to start over. We're about to do something different or something like that. So that would be the next thing, is playing with the small phrase changes and how do those make you want to change your dancing. The next thing I would play with is just hitting one instrument, like the horns. All right, I'm only going to dance to the horns this song, or I'm only going to dance to the piano. I'm only going to dance to the lyrics, but just picking one aspect of the dance and trying to move only when it moves, never when it, or only when you hear it, never when you don't. And again, the whole point, like not necessarily that you would do this in your dancing, but picking the moments to do that in your dancing, right? Having those moments where it's like, ooh, this would be the perfect moment to only move to the piano and then stop when the piano stops, you know? Ooh, that reminds me of another one that I don't think I have in here, which is call and response. Now this one, well, it could require a partner, or it doesn't have to. Call and response often can be, I do something, then my partner does something, then I do something, and then my partner does something. And when your partner's doing something, you're not moving. You're completely still so that they can do their thing and all the focus is on them, and then they switch it back to you. That's a classic method. But you can also do call and response with the music, where the music does something and then you do something, and the music does something and then you do something. I actually had a drummer one time who did this with me, where we were performing together and he was drumming and it was just him going da-da-da-da, and then he'd stop. And then it was my turn, and me and my partner had to do something. It was really fun because he would create a rhythm and then I try to recreate that rhythm in our bodies. and then he'd create a new rhythm, and I'd try to recreate that rhythm in our bodies. And the rhythm wasn't happening in the music. There was no music at that moment, but I was recreating it, and that made it make sense. And the same thing you can do, even if there's music playing, if a rhythm happens in the song, you can then recreate that rhythm. Even if there's music playing, there's other things going. If that rhythm's not there, you can create it again, especially if that instrument is not there. So if the piano's happening, the piano creates a rhythm that's like da-da-ba-ba, right? And then the piano goes silent. That's a great time to stick in the same ba-da-ba-ba with your own musicality that makes it almost like the piano continues playing, but it's you. So call and response is another great one, which also leads into being your own instrument. Now this is kind of similar, but I think you can look at it differently as well, in that like what if you were the instrument? How would you want to add to this song? So instead of trying to exactly copy everything, what would you want to add to create sound and to create rhythm and musicality in this song, right? So if you listen, and you can do this in a couple different ways, like listen to a song and just start adding a rhythm that's not in the song. Pick something simple like da, 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 or da, 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 or something like that. Start out really easy with things that maybe you already know, rhythms that you're used to, and see if they work or not, right? And one thing to notice is that usually the difference between standard songs and swung songs or swing songs, meaning a song that has a very even rhythm or a song that has swung rhythm, which is more, if you listen to it, if you break down a song, an even rhythm song is going to go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, or an even rhythm song will go 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E. Whereas a swung song will go 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4. Da-ga-da, 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 right? 1 and a 2 and a. So the swing songs will have a different rhythm. So usually with a swing song, 1 and a 2 and a 3, you want to play with things that hit those rhythms. A 1, a 2, a 3, or 1 and 2 and 3 and. Whereas with a straight song, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, it wouldn't make sense to go a 1, a 2 as often. Sometimes it does, but it's easier to throw things in that hit that 1 and 2 and rhythm. So if the song's going 1 and 2 and 3 and, you can go and 1, and 3, and 5, 1 and 2, 3 and 4. But not as easily, it's not as easy to go 1, a 2, 3, a 4, because the rhythms don't mesh up as well. Some really good musicians can get away with mixing them. I'm not good enough yet to do that. But again, challenge yourself, play with it. Don't just do the one that you know is right or easier. Play with both, see what works for you. Because that's how we learn, right? We've got to fail or try things out that don't work, try things out that work better for us. But the whole point of that one is basically be your own instrument. It kind of add to the song, and don't try to copy the song, try to add into the song. The next thing is measures or bar repetition. So in music, usually it's 4 bars, but not ever. Like there's sometimes are 3 bars, right? And other things, but to keep things simple, let's talk about the one I know is 4 bar. So that's basically every 4 beats, the bar repeats, or the measure repeats. I might be using the wrong words here. So musicality people, please, or musicians, please don't kill me if I'm slightly off on my wording, but every 4 beats, it repeats in a lot of music. Or in waltz, it's every 3 beats. 2, 2, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, right? Or in swing music, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You notice, yes, I'm counting to 8, but you kind of hear a change in the middle of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it kind of builds 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. As opposed to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. right? Like usually music kind of changes every so often. So listening to music and changing when it changes its build, we'll say, its measure building, or you could say its tension, right? Would be another way of looking at it. And these might not be the exact same thing. So measures might be different than tension. So let's add tension in as another one. But when the tension builds versus when the tension drops. And just dancing and changing your dancing when the tension builds or when the tension drops. Versus the measures or bars, changing it every time the measure changes. Right? So even if you think of a swing out, it kind of changes every time the measure changes because the first 4 beats are coming in and then the next 4 beats are going away and then coming in and going away. So it naturally already does that in some form. 6 count does not. So you'd have to change out your 6 count if you wanted to make it work. That could be a fun exercise though, is do your 6 count and every 4 beats change something to show the measure change while continuing your 6 count. That could get difficult, but could be fun. Okay, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more things. So I'm going to try to go through all 5 of these. Well, I'm going to get through all 5 no matter what. But yeah, so choreography, surprising your partner. We already talked about creating a story, choreographing that way. But another way is surprising your partner or the crowd. That's another really valuable thing to do in your dancing. So you might want to just focus on that. And this could be a musicality thing either way of like listening to the music and listening for those surprise moments in the music, which I think is really important. You want to do that. You want to listen to the surprises in the music and then hit those surprises with surprises in your dancing, like a dip or just a stop or anything that's just out of the norm from what you're used to, what your partner's used to you doing, what the crowd's used to seeing you do. That is a key aspect of musicality, is surprising. But also, you can also look at it as being your own instrument and surprising people, because some songs might not have any what we would call surprises in them. They might have very simple aspects. That doesn't mean that you can't add surprises in and make the song more complex and the choreography more complex by throwing in some surprises. Knowing when to do them is still important though, right? And so kind of listening to songs that do throw in surprises to get a feel for how they do it and when they do it can help you do that in your own dancing too. And kind of naturally pick out those moments in the songs that don't have any surprises and still throw the surprises in. The dips, the tricks, the things that are outside your norm. So that's another thing. The next thing, rhythm texturing. So we talked about rhythm timing, where we have something that's like, this is one timing, and then is a different timing, right? Or all different timings. But let's take one timing and give it a different texture, right? So if we just take verses, do you hear the difference in texture? The rhythm's the same, but the texture is different. Even this. All 3 of those have different textures, right? And so when you hear different texture, I want to react to it differently, right? I don't want to react the same way to this that I react to that I react. They're all different. They all make me want to move differently. The move that I do could still be the same move, right? I could still just open and close my hand, but the texture of how I do that changes based on the sound, right? So again, if it's a quiet sound, right? If it's just versus brown, 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 or sorry, and then same, let me get the same timing, but different texture. Brown, right? So you guys get the idea of the difference in texture of how you move. Next, clarity of rhythms. Okay, so clarity of rhythms is different than the others in that rhythm timing, it's similar to rhythm timing, but for me it's different because it's focusing more on the perfectionism of your timing versus changing up timings, right? Rhythm timing, like the other one, was about playing with maybe 3 different times. Okay, playing with this one, playing with that one, right? And playing with different things. But now I'm looking at, like, how do I perfect the one timing and really get clear on it. So if you listen, like there's a metronome and you have a metronome playing. A metronome has that perfect, and now you try to match that, and you try to match. And you'll notice you're not perfect with it. You're gonna clap late. You're gonna clap early, right? And you're gonna be slightly off with the metronome. And so the rhythm timing is about getting more in sync with that metronome so that it sounds like I'm sure some of you heard melody. Melody, is that the right word? When different people all come together. I'm not sure if that's the right word, but when multiple people come together and sing one thing at the exact same time, if they hit the exact same pitch, all of a sudden it sounds completely different than if they're just slightly off from each other. So it really resonates together. And that's what you're listening for. If you can hit the same timing with the metronome or with something else that's really got a clear timing, then you start to hear that like resonance in the movement. And you can do it with clapping, you can do it with singing, you can do it with just stomping your feet, or even not stomping, but just moving your body. But you're really trying to move your body to the exact timing that's happening and not be off at all. It's really easy to do. If you have a metronome, it's really easy to practice with really clear, just basic rhythm timing that's even. It's harder to practice with rhythms that are not even, right? Because I don't think there's metronome. I don't know. I haven't seen a metronome that gives you uneven timings that will go, right? But what you can do is just listen to a song that has something in it that's there, like, you know, that's repeating over and over, and really try to hit that more accurately. So whether it be the piano going, consistently going da 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 da, and you trying to get closer to hitting that da da with your voice, with your body, with your feet, whatever it is. I do recommend it be something that you can hear, because you will hear a difference between when you're slightly off versus when you finally get in tune with it. You'll be like, whoa, I noticed. You'll be able to tell a little bit more easily. And especially if you can like take out and only have that instrument playing. There are software programs out there that will do that, that will take a song and only give you one part of it. What's the main one that I think of that does that? It's on a Mac. There's one thing that you can edit the music, and probably on a PC too. You might have to buy it though. It might not be free. But if you look for creating music, apps that create music or software that creates music, they usually have very basic rhythms that you can throw in, and they'll play that rhythm over and over and over on a loop for you. So that would be the way to practice that. And then even in your dancing, to practice really hitting those triple steps, hitting those rock steps, hitting your cha-cha-cha, whatever it is, really hitting it crisp and right on the rhythm. And there is, I promise you, you'll never be perfect at this. The only thing is, like, it's kind of one of those things where the better you get, the more you can see how off you are or how off other people are. And so the more experience you have with it, the more you'll hear other people that you wouldn't have heard before. And that's why I think some competitions, you'll see someone and they'll dance and you'll be like, wow, that person was amazing. And they'll get a really low score. And the reason why is because the advanced judges are seeing how far off they are from the music. They're seeing their timing is really off compared to what the judges know is possible, right? Whereas what you see as possible is not as high, right? You don't notice how far off they are because you're not as practiced at that. Just like a drummer, the more experienced drummers, they can really see how far off someone is. Whereas when you're new, you don't notice it as much. Okay, two more things, last two. One is simple versus complex rhythms. So now we're dealing with, okay, let's deal with really simple rhythms, just like da, 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 versus complex rhythms like da, ki, da, or even more complex, or boom, ta, ki, da, ga, boom, right? Like that's a complex one, right? Because it had lots of different hangs for different amounts of time. Right? That's complex. And I guess this is really multiple things. Practicing complex rhythms is one thing on its own, but then practicing complex rhythms compared to simple rhythms and the dynamic contrast between the two is really its own thing. So I guess contrast is another thing. Complex rhythms, really we've got kind of three things there. We've got simple rhythms, complex rhythms, and then the contrast between simple and complex rhythms. But then even just its own thing would be just contrast of anything. It doesn't have to be rhythms, but contrast in general is a great musicality concept. So just being like big versus small and normal versus big, and changing that up. And then the last thing would be breaking down specific dances, and maybe even how well do different dancers dance in these categories is its own thing. So this is less about improving your own musicality, although it will, but this is about recognizing the skill level of others so that you can then recognize your own. Because honestly, it's way harder to know your own if you can't see someone else and how well they're doing. You're definitely not going to see how well you're doing. So watch other dancers and be like, how well are they doing in each of the categories we've gone over so far? Pick one and just look at, oh, they did that really well. Not so well there. Watch them for a whole dance or several dances in a row to see how well they do in one subject. And then change subjects, watch them in other ones. It doesn't have to be the same person either. You can change people, but it can be the same person. But really break down like how well do people do in these dance forms, right? And you could even get nerdy on it and be like, okay, Lindy Hoppers, like Lindy Hoppers in general. I just watched 10 Lindy Hoppers deal with contrast. And this is how well they did. Now I watched 10 tango dancers with contrast, and this is how well they did. And you can notice kind of what the similarities and differences are in different dance forms and how well they do in those dance forms. It'd be a really interesting study to see the musicality, all those musicality concepts we just talked about, broken down from, you know, watching 10 different dancers, or ideally 100 different dancers in each of the dance forms. But the whole purpose of this, again, is more for just being able to recognize watching other people and how well they do, so that then you can then critique yourself more accurately as well. And that's all I got. I mean, I'm sure there's more. There's probably hundreds more things that you can do to improve your musicality and really look at different aspects. But those are the ones that I've come up with today. And again, I started, I don't remember how many I said we were going to have, but we actually ended up with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 20, 21, 22 different ways to practice your musicality. Each one of those could hold you for an entire hour easily, just by practicing them in a variety of different ways to different songs and things like that. Okay, so if there's any questions, pop them in. I am over time, so I do need to cut out, but if there's 1 or 2 quick questions, pop them in. I'll answer those. If they seem like they're going to be too long, I'll save them for the next call, and we can go into detail on the next call. Other than that, thanks very much.